Welcome to Non-Gendered Fitness, where we explore health, fitness, transitioning, and queer life from beyond the binary. Proudly brought to you by Fearless Movement Collective, the home of queer fitness and health. And here's your host, Bowie Stover.
Hi there, welcome to Non-Gendered Fitness. This is episode 18. My name is Bowie Stover. My pronouns are they, them, and I am flippin' stoked to have you join me. This show is recorded on the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Sovereignty never was and never will be ceded. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. In this episode today, friends, we are going to be looking at how you can explore your gender identity and, most importantly, understanding that any identity that you explore is valid and you can totally change it however many times you like until you find the ways that help you feel good about you. Before we jump in, I want to make it really clear that a person doesn't have to transition in any way to be valid within their identity. You don't have to change your name, you don't have to change your pronouns, you don't have to change the way you dress or who you interact with or anything to be valid as someone who's trans, someone who's gender diverse, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, demi-boy, demi-girl, like any of those identities. You don't actually have to do anything differently. If that's who you say you are, then your identity is valid. You're valid just as you. And how you choose to express yourself, as much or as little as you like, is totally valid. See, there's no single way to do gender. It is not just a spectrum, it is beyond that because it is such an individual and personal thing. There is no standard here that anyone has to meet. The way that you feel about how you are inside and who you are inside are totally all about you and your thing. So that means you can do you any way that you like. And there is nothing wrong with exploring all the possibilities of how you may choose to identify. There are so many amazing different terms that people have come up with to help put a meaning to their gender expression and also to help other people relate because they may share a similar experience. It's just constantly growing list of incredible identities, and any person is able to progress through all of them. There is no rules. There is definitely no rules here. There are no boxes that anyone has to fit into, and I know that can be really hard to understand because there is a lot of gatekeeping within our community regarding how a person can identify. There are people who are very sensitive about their identities, and I can totally respect that because it is such a challenge for so many of us to be validated within our identities as it is. And I can see how a person who maybe has fought really hard for their identity and for representation of their identity, and then to have someone come along and say, well, I started out identifying this way, but I feel like it's not my jam anymore, so I'm going to explore myself further, and my pronouns may change, my name may change, even though I may have already changed them before. I'm going to change them again because I don't feel like they are me anymore. And there are people out there who do get defensive about that. And that's not okay. Because you can't have one person saying, well, this was my experience. I transitioned and I only had to do it once and I feel so aligned with who I am now and my gender expression. And therefore, if that was how it was for me, that's how it has to be for you. But that's just not the truth. There's a lot of this that goes on, particularly people who are transitioning within the binary. So someone who may be a trans man or a trans woman, because they are still fitting within that gender binary. And for them, that aligns with who they are. And that is amazing. And I celebrate them because it takes so much courage for any person to transition in any way. And at no point here am I trying to highlight that any of it is wrong, because that is not true. Every person has the right to transition and express themselves and be themselves absolutely any way they like. There is no wrong way to do you. However, what does happen is people who I identify outside of the gender binary, who are gender diverse, who are gender fluid, who are non-binary, who are agender, who are all the different kinds of expression, and sometimes all rolled into one. When they begin to explore who they are and how they want to be, it can challenge people who feel aligned within the binary. And well, I can get it, because they may not understand our experiences as being someone who goes, you know what, I think I don't get the binary, it's not for me, and that is okay. But just because someone doesn't understand it, the same way I don't understand how someone can identify within the binary. So we switch that around, right? I don't get it. I have never felt that I was in alignment with being assigned female at birth. It's never been my jam. I've never thought of myself as a girl or a woman or female, any of those kind of very womanly labels that are put out there. It's never been me. And I don't understand how to fit in that, but that's okay, because that's my experience. And by no way am I saying that because I don't live within the binary that no one else should. That if you're transitioning, then you shouldn't transition and stay within the binary spectrum, because my experience is only relevant to me. And a person who is transitioning within the binary, their experiences are relevant to them. But their lack of understanding that someone can transition and actually be open to expressing that the binary is not for them, and then be told that that's not okay, that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong here, because no one can tell anyone how to be. No one can tell anyone what label they should fit under, and then what goes along with said label, because that's just forcing stereotypes onto people within our own community. And if we're out there going, please validate my identity, please respect my identity, please don't stereotype me, if we've got folks out there saying that, then we within the community should not accept other people from within the trans and gender diverse community turning around and saying, well, I'm asking for validation and acceptance and respect and acceptance of my identity, but I'm not going to do that to you because I don't get your identity. It's like, well, you're doing exactly the same thing that cishet people do to trans and gender diverse people. And that's not cool. There's so much policing of identities that happens within the trans and gender diverse community, and I think it's really important to have a conversation about that because it's harmful. And I also get that this is a topic that could be really inflammatory to people, and some people don't like hearing it or having it raised because it challenges them. And the thing is, what I've learned is that if a topic or conversation challenges you, it's probably because it's pushing a boundary of yours, and you may actually be someone who is perpetrating these acts of policing of someone else's identity, even if you don't realize it. And I know that most people don't have ill intentions. I honestly believe that everyone is doing their best with what they know. I believe that. Everyone is doing the best with what they know. But that doesn't mean that it's good for other people. People act in ways that help themselves feel good. And that's the challenge here that we face when it comes to binary trans folks and people who are gender diverse and live outside of that gender binary or that spectrum, or, I mean, even those are such limiting terms, but, you know, it's the labels we have to work with at the moment. But the problem comes when this binary trans narrative is shouted over the top of people who are living outside of that binary spectrum. Living outside of the binary spectrum means that you don't have to conform to anything. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to fit in some stereotypical way. And you can choose to explore however you want to be. I've seen so many different gender non-conforming folks around the world sharing their stories and sharing how they began exploring their gender identity more within the binary. So they may have had surgeries or started hormones, but they are feeling that they may not feel that a trans-binary identity best represents them, even though in the past they felt that it may have. So they've shared these stories, but they're fearful because they're fearing that they're going to be judged by people because they've transitioned, but now they're saying, well, that doesn't align with me anymore. I want to allow my identity to grow as me as a person also grows. And I see it's not okay for them to fear that. They should be able to feel safe to explore any way they want to be. Just because you've transitioned in some way doesn't mean that you're stuck with that, or that it's like there's a rule that says, well, you can only transition once and there's only one choice, and if you don't like it, well, then you just have to suck it up because you've chosen and you said you wanted to use he, him pronouns, and now you're saying you don't, and that's not okay. Because you know what's not okay? People saying that it's not okay. Let's make things really clear. Person can express their gender identity, or any identity really, not even gender, any identity, any way a person wants to identify. They can do it any plopping way they like. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or whether anyone else understands. It's an individual thing. And my opinion on how someone else chooses to exist in this world doesn't matter. See, we are not here to justify our self-expression to folks within the binary. And that may be really hard for some people to hear and some people to accept. But that's how it is. We owe the binary nothing. We do not have to pick a label and fulfill a stereotype based on it. So a person that lives beyond the binary does not have to be androgynous. They can present themselves to the world in any way that they like. And there is a huge difference between feeling that you fit within the binary or even fluctuate within it, for my gender fluid kin out there, and wearing clothes that society has labelled as men's and women's. Big difference between gender expression and the clothes you wear that society has labelled as men's and women's. Just because a person identifies beyond the binary doesn't mean they have to suddenly look androgynous and they can't wear dresses or skirts if they are AFAB, or they can't wear jeans and t-shirts if they're AMAB. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't say that there's a rule on if you're a certain identity, then these are the clothes you have to wear. But it goes on. It's a bit full on. And there is definitely not a rule that says once you've picked an identity that you have to live with it forever and ever and it can never change. That is seriously the most inflexible opinion I've ever heard come from people, and they say it. And if you choose to explore different ways that you can express yourself, you are not a trender. You have every right to grow in your identity as you grow in the rest of your life. See, our identities are such an important part of our self-expression, and it is healthy for us to change and grow as we experience life, as we learn new things about ourselves or about the world. Change is healthy. So people can choose to change how they identify, what pronouns they use, their name, how they want to outwardly express themselves. And it is healthy to do that. What's not healthy is people saying, you've got one choice and then you're stuck with it. That's really unhealthy, friends. It is not a good way to be, because it's implying that the world is in black and white. You're this or you're that. And if you're this, then you have to stay as this, because if you don't, then it's bad. It's so limiting. We get enough limiting comments shared with us from people from the cishet community. We really need only support from people within our own community. So if you choose a certain pronoun or a certain combination of pronouns or a refusal of all pronouns that you feel good about, that is perfect. No one can tell you that you have to label yourself anything. And this goes for sexual identity as well. This is another big one. It's like, once you've come out as this thing, once say I used to identify as a lesbian. Well, I mean, I don't now. I'm just Bowie. Bowie who gets attracted to people. I don't really care what their physicality is. It's the person, right? But because I used to identify as a lesbian and now I don't, there are people out there who tell me that that's wrong. Even when I was identifying as a lesbian, I think it was much more bi because, you know, I didn't only sleep with women, and there were so many lesbians out there who hated that and tell me I wasn't a real lesbian. It's like, no, I'm not. You are factually correct. And I'm okay with that. Clearly you're not. But I don't need to prove a point. I don't need to prove anything. I'm not, trying to hold up some lesbian standard here. It's laughable now, but this kind of thing happens, and it happens so much within the trans and the gender diverse community between trans binary folks and people who are living outside of the binary. And it's just harmful because not everyone is going to have the same levels of resilience or ability to ignore the shit that people put on them. Everyone's different. It could be the last thing you need to hear when you're already getting harassed at home or at your work or wherever, to have someone from your own community who you'd think would have your back going, you're wrong because I think you should be blah, 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 or you should identify this way, or you identify that way. So that means you have to do these things. It's like, fuck all that off. That is not okay. It's not. And you know what, friends? It's a tough one. Because there are so many ways a person can express themselves, and they are all right. A trans-binary identity is totally flippin' valid. I celebrate every person out there who is transitioning within the binary because, like I said, it takes so much, and they have taken the steps to live aligned with who they are, and that is the most amazing thing ever. I have nothing against people who are transitioning within the binary, so please don't mistake me there. That's not what this is about. I accept all people regardless of how they identify because my opinion means nothing. If it makes someone else happy, if someone chooses to express themselves however works for them, I'm happy for them. They're living their life, I'm living my life. Their choices in their life don't actually affect my life. So for me to say that someone else's identity is going to impact me is ridiculous. It doesn't. Someone else's pronouns do not hurt you, so you have no place to say what someone's pronouns should or could or have to be. It's personal opinion, and they are definitely not fact. We make our own personal opinions based on the stories we tell about ourselves, or the stories we tell ourselves about the experiences we've had in life. We all see the world through our own stories. None of us see the world as it factually is. It's all filled with these layers of stories from all the experiences we've had and all the meanings that we as individuals put on things. So my stories and my views of the world and my beliefs are valid for me, and that is all. And another person's stories and opinions and beliefs are valid for them. But that is all. And someone else's truth is their truth, and my truth is my truth. And it doesn't matter if they're different from someone else's because everyone is allowed to live their truth, right? There is already so much hurt in our community. We are a minority within a minority, and we cop shit from so many different angles within society. So why are we feeding that on to within other smaller groups within our own minority? It doesn't make sense. We are all in this together, friends. And what we need to do is show respect and compassion for one another. And I know that's hard. If you are someone who is hurting, if you've experienced a whole lot of pain and anger and fear and hurt and all of that stuff, it's hard. It's hard to see beyond that And I get it. I was there. I have been through that. I grew up in regional Queensland, out in the sticks, spending my life since I was 8 being harassed by homophobic fuckwits. So I grew up and I became closed off and mean, and I fought a lot because that was how I protected myself. There was a lot of hurt there, a lot of sadness underneath it all because I wasn't accepted as I was. And it's taken me a long time to let that go because shit like that is not easy to get rid of. It's like, especially in those foundational years when we're forming beliefs about ourselves and views on things in the world, that shit is hard to let go of. And it is a journey, and I am far from over with that journey. But I've learned so much about how holding on to the hurt that we experience just keeps hurting us. But if we can let it go, then we can feel better. And not only that, we feel better about ourselves, we feel better about other people, and we can show love and kindness to ourselves, but we can also show it to other people. We can't give people what we can't give ourselves. So if you are caught in a space of trauma, in a space of hurt, I can totally see that thinking that it can be another way might seem impossible. And there's a process for that, and going through that trauma and working through it and allowing yourself to have those experiences is okay. Allowing that hurt and allowing that process to happen, because the only way we can work through it is by learning from it. This is what I've learned. This is what I've learned. Trust me, I'm no expert here or on psychology or anything like that. It is all purely from personal experience, as I've tried to learn how to let go a lot of the anger that I have spent so much of my life holding on to because of the stuff that I've experienced, because of the cruelty of people from the general population directed at me simply because of my identity. So I've spent a long time really working to understand myself. And it takes effort, and it's ugly work because it brings up all the not pretty stuff inside and the nasty kind of feelings and the highlights that sometimes, you may not be a nice person. It can be shocking. For myself, it's just like, oh, yeah, wow, I really haven't been nice to myself or to other people. And in that space, it's so hard to show compassion and understanding of someone else's experience, especially if you're fearing that someone else sharing a different experience may diminish yours. But people only have the power over you if you let them. So I can only diminish someone else's experience if they allow my words to take away from them. Not that I want to do that at all. Please don't think that's what's happening here. We need to work together. We need to support each other. We've all had hard experiences. Binary or not in the binary doesn't make us any different. We are all people searching for how we can express ourselves. So we are all the same in that experience. And some of us come to those conclusions and find ourselves quicker than others. And some people have to take their time and explore all the ways that they can express themselves. But neither way is wrong or right. It is absolutely right for each individual, however they choose to take that journey. And we need to be accepting of that. If we can't accept each other, we can't ask other people for acceptance. We cannot receive what we can't give ourselves. Reciprocity. We only get back what we give out. So if we can give understanding and support to people, then we receive that. So your identity is valid, however you choose to experience it, and in all the ways that you choose to experience it. And one thing you can do, and it's definitely not going to be the easiest thing, is to trust in yourself and your truth, regardless of what someone else says. Don't take on the hurt of others. And that's where so much of these judgments come from. It's the hurt of certain people fearing that someone else expressing a different point of view is going to hurt them or it challenges them. Have you ever noticed, right, that when someone expresses an opinion of something and you feel like you suddenly get closed off or angry or you want to lash out, it's like that. It's because it's challenging a belief that we have, right? And I'm sure we've all experienced that, but recognizing that we're feeling challenged in that moment and asking why. What is it challenging me? So if in the case of someone else's gender expression, why are you challenged by someone choosing not to align within the binary? Or why are you challenged by someone who is choosing to identify within the binary? What is that challenge for you? Because if you can know that truth, then you can start to build that confidence in yourself and understanding in yourself, because we are so often against the things that challenge us. If you find it hard that someone is exploring a whole bunch of different pronouns and different names, and why? Ask yourself why. And be honest. Because when you know those answers, you have power within yourself. And that is such a cool thing. And if it's someone attacking you because of your identity, say you're expressing how you've been exploring your gender identity and you've used, and I know people who do this, they use she, they, him pronouns, and people get challenged by that. And it's like, well, why can't you pick one and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, whoa, friend. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If someone wants to use all the pronouns, amazing. So if someone is getting challenged by that and saying you can't use all pronouns, then just remember that that is their shit. Or if you've decided to change from using they, them pronouns to he, him pronouns, or they, them pronouns to she, her pronouns, or she, they pronouns, or any combination of pronouns, or no pronouns. I know people who use the term it on themselves. No pronouns, just it and their name. Amazing. I have full clarity and understand exactly what they want. How can I complain about that? But if someone is getting challenged by you expressing who you are, remember that is their shit and not yours. It is not your responsibility to manage their emotions. And if they're getting upset, you are well within your rights to set a boundary there and say, like, I see that you're getting upset here, but I do not deserve to be receiving your hostility, your hard words, or anything that you are acting right now. I'm removing myself from this situation. And you have every right to do that and feel good about that, because you are allowed to express yourself any way you want, and you do not have to be on the receiving end of someone else's projected shit. End of story. That is just how it is. You do not have to explain yourself or justify your choices or your identity to anyone, even if they are within our trans or gender diverse community, and even if they may be a friend. You don't have to justify you to anyone. And it can be so common that these things happen, right? I am very, very certain that I am not the only person within the trans or gender diverse community who has been on the receiving end of lateral violence. It is way too common, and it's not okay. And more conversations that we have like this, the more we are going to be able to work together and move through them. But we do need to have people on both sides open to that communication and open to accepting that, you know what, they've got shit. And it's okay to have shit. We've all got shit. None of us are perfect. It's not about being perfect, but it's about being accepting that someone else can have an experience, and that is valid. Everyone's experience is valid because it is their truth. And see, our labels are only one small part of us. So there is so much more to us than just our gender expression. And sometimes that can feel hard to believe, because for ourselves, when we spend so much time thinking about that and thinking about how we're perceived, how we feel, and how we want to be addressed and all of those things, it can feel like it's all of who we are. But it's really not. And it took me a long time to realize that. I got caught in this bubble of thinking that was like my whole world. And I was transitioning, so I was thinking about that, and I was getting my name legally changed, and I'd changed my pronouns, and all of these things were happening, right? So it became so much of my focus that I really did feel quite consumed by it. it got to a point that I had to like really take that step back and be like, wow, I need a breather here. I need to come up for air, because it became just this all-consuming focus, and it wasn't healthy. And I think we all have to take moments like that. Yes, well, we are all working on improving our rights and improving our safety within society and advocating for our community. And there's so many folks out there that do that. And it's not like it's an intentional thing. It's when we live these experiences, we're finding ourselves constantly educating people, right? And so it becomes the big focus of our life. But taking that moment to come back and remember that is not all of who we are. It is just one part of our identity. There are so many more parts to who I am. I practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have blue eyes. I have brown hair. Like, these are all parts of my identity as well. Like, I think I'm funny. There's more to Bowie than just the fact that I'm non-binary. It's that one small part. And, I'm a staffy owner. I am a trainer. I'm a teacher. I'm someone's lover. I'm a partner. I'm a business owner. I'm a podcast host. So all these other things stack on top of that one little part being Bowie's non-binary. So remembering that while it can seem like that's, especially when we're in transition, that's everything to focus on, it's really not. Just remember there's so much more to you than your gender expression and how you choose to portray yourself. So finding ways that you can connect with yourself by choosing the experiences you want to have and the life you want to live and the people you want to have in it and the person you want to be all help to give you a deeper understanding of yourself and allow you to see that there is more to you than just your gender identity, your gender expression, your sexuality, like all those things. They are just a fraction of who you are and who you have the potential to be. So learning more about yourself, maybe you don't think there's more to you, but maybe taking that time to actually look in and learn about who you are and what you want and who you want to be and how you can be. Because we all have those opportunities. We really do. It is possible for us to make all the choices for ourselves in our lives. And when we have this understanding of who we are and we start living the way we want and in alignment with our values, then the power of other people's words to influence our thoughts and feelings get less. People won't hold power over you with their words, with their actions, if you know who you truly are inside. And that may seem like super fluffy talk, but it's just so important to see beyond that label of your gender expression, because there's so much more to you. See, being you is so important, and you have the right to express yourself however you safely can. And I say safely because I know there's so many folks out there who don't have that privilege of safety. And depending on where you live in the world, it's going to influence that. And it's not okay that that's how it is, but it is how it is, and it's why we all work towards educating people, isn't it? So that other people can understand us, can see that, we're just like them. We are exactly the same as who they are. We want the same things in life. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be appreciated. We want to be happy. We all want these same things. Our identities, anyone's identity in whatever way, it doesn't matter. I think deep down, these are the things that all humans want. We are all the same. And these labels can be great because they draw people together who share the same labels, but can also segregate us, and it can segregate people because then people stick to their label groups. And then people fear the things they don't understand and don't know, and it's really easy to misinform someone about something that they're fearful of if they don't have any familiarity with it. So labels can be a positive but also a negative thing. Having a label or identifying in a specific way does help you feel less alone, because you know there's a community of incredible humans out there that you can connect with because they all share that same experience as you. And that's a freaking cool thing. One thing we can all do to help each other out, and I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, and I'm going to highlight it again. I think I've talked about this in other shows as well. But here we are again, showing compassion to the people that may be challenged by the experiences of others. And I don't just mean take shit from folks and take on their problems. Just to be clear, I mean be clear on your boundaries of how you will be treated. But show understanding and compassion that in this moment they are challenged. Shit's coming up for them. And we don't always manage our shit well. Oh, we've all been in that position. And even though you're trying, you just may not manage that shit well. Because it's okay for someone to have a differing view than yours. Like, it's not okay to force someone to take that view on and, you have every right to refuse to have to justify your experience or your existence to anyone. But that doesn't mean you can't show kindness and compassion to a person, because if someone's feeling challenged and we attack, they become defensive and we get this cycle of attack, defend. And people really aren't open to changing their minds about things or understanding things if they're feeling like they need to defend themselves. I have learned this as someone who spent so many years fighting. I can tell you right now, it literally gets nowhere. There are no winners in a fight. Do you know what? You know how you make a winning choice? Have a conversation, but with boundaries, and be clear that it's okay to have a conversation, but you are not going to accept mistreatment or judgment or taking on someone else's stuff. So no one wins from fighting. They may genuinely not realize their words are harmful, or they may just be feeling so challenged that they can't express themselves. But you would be amazed with how showing some understanding to someone can actually change a whole circumstance. I've practiced this. It actually works. If you're feeling safe and comfortable to, take a moment to listen and show understanding, because if you want to be understood and accepted by someone, you gotta give it. You really do. You can't demand acceptance if you are not going to accept someone else. And that's just how it is. But know when to walk away from a conversation with someone if they are not open to hearing different perspectives, if they're constantly asking you to justify your answers or have an argument for every point that you make, because those people are not worth the effort. If someone wants to take a conversation and turn it into an argument, no one is going to win. And that's it. Arguing is like a fight for who's right, and you don't have to prove your identity to anyone. You don't. But they don't have to prove anything to you either. So take that step that if you're feeling like it's turning into something that's other than an open conversation, to walk away. You don't have to deal with their shit. Friends, there are so many amazing peer support groups out on Facebook, so you can access support and connection with other folks that are sharing a similar experience. And this is what I've done. Coming from a regional town in the super redneck state, I had Facebook groups, and that's where I started connecting and feeling like I wasn't so alone, even though within my locality, I may have been within a really small queer group, and I didn't really have the confidence to connect with that community because they were quite hostile. But, from the environment we all lived in, I could see why everyone was a little bit kind of at each other. But there are peer support groups out there that can really, really help you. Alrighty, friends. Let's take a quick run over of what we've gone through today. We've looked at the judging and policing of gender non-conforming identities that happens within the trans and gender diverse community, particularly by binary trans folks. Now, please remember, friends, this is not to diminish their experiences or invalidate them. I get it. But it takes being accepting of others to be accepted as we are. And it's not okay to demand it from cis-het folks to get acceptance and validation while pushing shit onto other members of your own community for not fitting into your own binary views. And I've seen it so much. And if you're choosing to take that as an attack, friend, I can't change that. But trust me, I am not attacking trans binary folks here. I mean always with love, because what I want is a community that is connected and supporting of each other. If we don't have these conversations and highlight what's not okay and what's actually harmful for other people within our community, then how are we going to move and grow and connect together? And I'm also not saying that this is every trans-binary person who does this either. I have just seen a lot of these interactions, whether I've experienced them myself or I've seen them on other platforms where people are pushing their binary views of transition. And there are going to be all sorts of folks out there, just as many trans-binary folks who are so supportive of people who are gender non-conforming. They are there as well. There is a big mix of people. And they are amazing. They're all amazing. And you're all amazing. You are all amazing humans. And I'm not judging here. We've talked about believing in yourself and your identity. Now, your identity is the perfect one for you, wherever you're at within that exploration of it. And that is all that matters. And practicing healthy boundaries and showing compassion to folks that can't manage themselves is going to be really helpful in your life. And not just with these tough conversations that you may have within the community or with people who are learning about trans and gender diverse people, but just in every relationship that you have in life. Boundaries and compassion. They are two really empowering things to practice. And remember, if you are feeling like you need some support, there are heaps of peer support groups on Facebook that you can access with bunches of other people sharing a similar experience to you. So take that time, friends, jump on, have an explore, check out who you can. I promise you, you are not alone. Now, if you want to find out more about what we've talked about today or what other rad things that we do, you can go to our website at www.fearlessmovement.co. You can find us on Facebook as Fearless Movement Collective, or you can jump onto Instagram and check out non-gendered fitness as non_gendered_fitness, FMC as Fearless_movement_co, or me, Bowie, as the.no.t.nb. Yes. And until next week, pals, remember, you are valid just as you are, however you choose to express yourself, however you choose to be. No one can tell you how to be you. Only you have that power and only you have that choice. So feel confident in that. Feel good about knowing yourself, because that is the power. That gives you power. Because you're amazing. Have a rad as day, pals.